Hello, Joe Pryor here, and welcome back in this continuing saga of understanding how to invest in real estate. Let's start this module with choosing a market before and choosing an investment property. And let's try to understand why that can be important to you. In real estate investing can be done anywhere. If you happen to be in a town that it's fantastic, you understand, the numbers really look good, that's fantastic. That is a place that you should definitely invest. But all over the United States, there is opportunity of some kind. The question is, how does that match up with what your plan is, what your goals are, what your parameters are for what makes for a good real estate investment? But when we're talking about 50 states, we got a whole lot to choose from. And so, again, we've talked about the differences in markets, but let's kind of get into, trying to define that. So, when you're talking to someone in a particular marketplace or thinking about a particular marketplace, economics and demographics are extremely important. First of all, what are the economic drivers? Is there stability in the market? Is Boeing there? Is a major Air Force base there? Is Amazon there? Is technology there? Is a lot of great hospitals, on and on and on. What's really driving that market? Because if the economics are not good, then the jobs are not going to be there that are going to attract some people that are going to rent from you. And the other thing is the unemployment rate high or low? That could be extremely important. If you have a very low unemployment rate, that's really a good indicator that you're going to be in a very, very good market. If it's very high, obviously there's been some disruption in the economy. If all of a sudden you have we're 3.6%, I think the last time in the United States when we're doing this, but what if it was 8? What if it was 6? Well, then you need to do a further investigation because, something may be wrong. Something may be going on. Maybe there's not stability in some of these large companies. Maybe they're relocating. Things you need to know about. The other thing, and this is always important, is what are the percentages of home ownership? Not only in the overall city, but even in, kind of drilling down into the numbers, the immediate area of where you want to invest. And I'll give you an example. I think we talked about this before. 62 to 64% is normal for the United States. I can show you some cities that I will not go mentioning, that we're not talking about right now, but, it's 49%. In other words, there's something wrong there if you have below the national average. And that's extremely important. And then when you drill down into the numbers, we want it higher than 62 to 64% because we want appreciation. We want those owner occupants to be able to drive the appreciation and at the same time, keep the supply of rental properties down. That's something that somebody that really knows their city is going to be able to tell you. And here's the point. Once you get into this dialogue, once you start asking these questions, new questions are going to be coming up. Now, I can tell you that I can go back to 2004, and it was a time when all of a sudden I was getting inundated with technology people, California investors. And, it was a situation where they were asking me a lot of questions about the economics and demographics. And I've been dealing with mostly local investors up until that time. And I went, wow, I don't know this. And after that, I went to school and I said, I've got to devote myself to knowing all this information. The other thing is you may ask a question to somebody and they may say, well, I don't know, and that's a good answer. They may know a lot of other answers, but I don't know is a good one. But even a better follow-up to that is, but I'm going to find out and I want to get back with you on that. That's a good question. And we do learn this way, because there's always some new question that somebody asks that you never knew about before. So don't ever be afraid to ask about any of these as many questions as you need. So here's the thing, population growth. And there's statistics out there that you can find about population growth. They're all over the place. It's extremely important. If a city is growing, then the rental market is growing. The owner-occupant market is growing, and there's a reason people are moving there. Maybe there's great amenities. Maybe it's a gorgeous place to live. Maybe the jobs are plentiful. Maybe the cost of living is low. All those things are questions you're going to ask. Are you above the cost of living, below the cost of living? Why are these people coming here? Why are they leaving? because that is happening in some areas, but you need to know that. You need to know about that. If it's stagnant or receding, it's a red flag. What kind of jobs are being created? An engineer is going to be paid more than somebody that's in a service center, working for Amazon in a fulfillment center. Not that there's anything wrong with that. You want those kinds of things, but it's going to be important to know what the breakdown of the type of jobs that are coming. In commercial, you learn that there is a situation where, let's say there is a national average of engineers that you can go to. And if you're below that number, it's not good for the economy. If you're above that number, then it's good for the economy. And so those are called essential jobs. We always look at that as being extremely important in terms of the kind of jobs that are being created. It's going to indicate some high wealth that's coming in there, and that's going to bring in a lot of tax dollars that cities need to give you the amenities that you need and the life that you need in that city, the quality of life. And is there a consistent pattern of growth? Is it a jagged edge like we talked about in some markets? So you're going to need to really look into that. And also, a market that is growing, a market that has good jobs, what we're looking for is how is that affecting the appreciation? And that data, as you know, is available for long-term trends. We introduced that before out of the St. Louis Fed, if you're looking for that type of a thing. And so we want to know, is this market getting better? And I know some markets that are not at this point. And I know some markets that are. After COVID, things kind of went down a little bit in a lot of markets, but then we've seen them recover back. And those markets keep growing. Other markets haven't recovered post-COVID. They've gone back to a normal market, which has some issues. So you need to know about that. And remember, cyclical markets, linear markets, and hybrid kind of versions of those markets, something that you need to know. But a city's appreciation is not enough data. It's a good starting point. But as we said before, there's demographics, there's economics, there's schools, there's every other kind of thing that you can think about. And once you get all that information, then those pieces of the puzzle start fitting together. It's a complex thing. You're going to have to do some work, and the person you're working with hopefully have done the work and is going to do even more work so that puzzle is put together and you can see the whole picture at that point instead of the individual pieces. So make sure that the metrics that you get, even if they're good, are the ones that match up with the way that you look, that you want to invest your hard-earned money. And then having a trustworthy and reputable team members to the market is crucial. When I deal with people that want to invest, one of the first things I say is, here's the phone number for the property manager. I want you to know before you do anything, I want you to talk to them because they're realists. They're people that are down on the ground doing this thing every day to make sure the property's rented. If it's not rented, it's not a good investment. And so putting together those teams, and I know I've emphasized this before, and I know this sounds repetitive, but it's worth repeating because it's extremely important to you if you're going to be successful. And reviews can be helpful in evaluating the team's performance. So, statistics are one thing, but also knowing people that have dealt successfully. Maybe there's a website you can go to, but we're constantly looking for people to review us, to tell us, how is our performance in this particular respect? Because, when I get today I had a Zoom meeting with an investor and he said, I was recommended to you by a person that's bought 3 homes with you. He's totally happy with you and the team and the property management, every aspect of it. And he says, this is where I want to go. Well, that's the best review you can ever have, is a recommendation like that, is a referral. So you need to know that some people are actually happy with you. I hope I make everybody happy. I hope you ever work with in the United States, it's the same way. We're never going to be perfect, but by God, we're going to err on the side of trying to be. And those reviews are very helpful. All right, so let's go into that crucial component that's going to end this module, which is using the right property management company. I'm going to give you some hints and some questions to ask and things about it. Because again, and I've emphasized this before, I can be the best at what I am. I can give you the perfect investment with the best lender, the best insurance policy, everything, the best builder. This is the person that makes or breaks you after all things are done. It can be perfect up to this point, but after that, oops, it can really go downhill. And so choosing the right property manager and being able to get out of your contract is extremely important if it turns out not to be true. But again, this is the person that turns paper into reality. No average. You don't want that. No good. That's not good enough. It's got to be outstanding. And I tell you what, it's hard to find. It's taken me years to do it. And I'm constantly on the search, in terms of doing it. Luckily, I have that greatness right now in property managers. And anybody else in a different city, in a different state that's really into this is going to be doing the same thing. And believe me, if they don't work out, it changes very quickly. So here's what a property manager does. They create a proper monthly income based on historical data. I told you about that one property manager that I've worked with for over 15 years. That's 15 years of data. You can see timelines, just like we saw those appreciation graphs. That's what he does. But he also looks in the immediate sense. He analyzes the market. He drills down into the details. He looks at the time of the year. He looks at all those things in terms of making sure that when he says this is what it's going to rent for, and by the way, we want him to be conservative. We don't want him to say, $1,700 and you get $1,400. We don't want that. We'd rather be $1,400 and you end up getting $1,550. That makes you very happy. So we've got to be conservative in our numbers. So, an investment specialist already rooted this out, believe me, and they will not tolerate bad property management. And you need to talk, as I said before, you need to talk to the property manager before you do anything. You need to know how the system is going to work. You need to have confidence in that person. And you need to also ask him for referrals. Can I get some referrals? Can I talk to some people? So I kind of know how you're doing. I want to talk to real human beings, or email them at the very least. Maybe they don't want you to call, but say, hey, look, I'm working with this particular gentleman, this particular woman, and I want to know, what do you think? Give me some pluses and minuses here. And so it's just a good way to do it. And again, the more questions you ask, the better. Now, the property manager, as I said, needs to be outstanding. And one of the ways that they're outstanding is every city, every area has an MLS system, multiple listing system. And, what's interesting about the market that I'm in, maybe 20% at the most actually, put it into the MLS system. Now, I think they need to. And the ones that I work with put them into the MLS system because realtors see it and they're getting paid a referral fee if they find and bring a successful tenant. And it's one way, but there are multiple ways. Their own websites, there's multiple sites there. About Zillow, about Realtor.com, about Trulia, about Apartments.com, everything that's out there, they need to be all over the place. And these larger and older managers have a lot of data, and that data means a lot to you. Doesn't mean that somebody else can't come in. For instance, that gentleman that I was talking about, I worked with for about 15 years, a lady that works with him for a long time set up her own company. And, I know she was properly trained. I know she's eager. So sometimes it's not just the bigger one, the older ones that are good. But, this is a situation where I knew her. I'd worked with her before through this larger company. And so those kinds of people can be good too. But the data is there. And that's important for you. The data does not lie. And the time of the year affects your rent. So for instance, if you're in a Midwestern, Southwestern city, schools typically start about the middle of August. And what that means is people want to be in their homes. If they're renting by the end of July, they have to prove that they're in that neighborhood, that they're in that school district. So they're not going to wait up to the last moment. And so all of a sudden this deadline passes. And so, what happens, September comes around, things aren't quite as good. It doesn't mean that they won't rent. It just means they won't rent it for as high as they were, say, in May, June, and July. And the same thing goes for different kind of climate, recreational areas and short-term rentals. If it's warm in southern Florida, it's a great time of year, when it's cold everywhere else. So time of the year is going to affect rents regardless of the type of properties that you choose. It just may be different. And here's a critical factor, and here's a question you need to ask that specialist or that realtor that you're dealing with. Does your property manager have veto power? Mine does. And the reason why is I want them to make me look good. Anybody in the real estate industry that I'm in wants to look good. And if I have a property manager that gets the highest rent in the shortest amount of time, people look at me more fondly in that particular respect. If things go wrong, the property manager is the first one that gets a call. I'm number two. And so I want him to have veto power because he says, no, there's too many rentals. No, this won't suit this particular market. I know I'm with the right person. And this is crucial. Over-promising and under-deliver. You don't want to under-deliver or over-promise. This has happened to me in a different state. It happened when I invested in Louisiana. Fortunately, I thought that the realtor was full of beans in terms of what they promised. But you're not necessarily going to know that. So again, you want people to be honest and conservative with you. And understand your two biggest enemies, vacancy and maintenance. You take 2 months of extra vacancy, that's worse than lowering your rents $100. This is the dialogue you're going to have with your property manager. Understand the initial period is harder, mainly because the later rental periods are going to give notice, 45 to 60 days. So you can't rent it until you own it, but once you own it, then your rental advertising by the property manager goes a lot faster. Understand also, new homes have warranties. Older homes should be scrutinized for major repairs before you get into it. This is going to affect vacancy. It's going to affect maintenance. So you want to know that going into it, regardless of the type of property that you buy. And vetting a tenant is incredibly important. I've seen property managers that don't, I promise that I'll get you somebody in there within 15 days and $15,000 worth of destruction is done in a matter of months. Getting the right person in there in the first place is more important than somebody that says, I'll pay you $200 more, and they're a lousy human being. They're not going to take care of your property. So we don't want a quick rental just to get a rental. We want the right tenant. They're going to look at criminal history. They're going to look at credit history. They're going to look at, if they're renters, they're not going to just get the last property manager because he may want to get rid of them. They're going to want the one before. They want to get a pattern going. And sometimes bad things happen to people. And property managers can be character people in terms of analyzing character. If you lose a job and have a divorce at the same time, you may be in a heap of trouble and you may lose a home. But you may be in bankruptcy, but what you did is you reaffirmed every debt except the big one, all right? And you've consistently paid. And maybe they get 2 months of a reserve account instead of 1 month. So the property manager is going to go through all of this with you. They're going to vet these people, tell you everything about them, and that way you can get that first tenant right because that's going to set the stage for going in the right direction. Communication. All right, I know I'm going a long time in terms of this module, but man, communication is important. If you can't get them immediately, there's a real problem. And they're going to get hold of you immediately, so your communication is going to be good in case there's a problem they need to discuss with. I almost put this as number one in terms of a great property manager. They can be really good, but if you don't hear from them, it can get really, really scary, and maybe they don't have the team that they need that can communicate properly. Always look at that as being extremely important to finding the great property managers because they're really great at doing this. And then monitoring the properties and keeping tenants happy, very important. I think they should inspect every 6 months because a year, man, there can be problems. My property managers are required to do a virtual tour on entry and exit because if there's crayon marks and they said they didn't do it, here's the before, this is the after. And then what happens, that's taken out of their security deposit, not out of your dollars. Subcontractors, and they go in and they do any kind of repairs, they should be required to report to the property manager and say, hey, did you know you have 3 dogs in that house? Well, no, there's only supposed to be 1. Well, there's 3. Well, they violated the lease or anything else. Or this house was a pit. You need to know that if that happens. Hopefully it's not going to happen at all. And then your management company needs to do drive-bys. That's crucial. They need to look, they're going to get contacted if the yard's bad, but doing drive-bys is just really essential to see how these people are living And if they're living well, you may want to renew their lease if they want to do it. So finally, supply and demand. Understanding supply and demand is huge. It's very simple. Too much supply, you're in trouble. You're going to have increased vacancy and lower rents. The other direction, or parity, you're in great shape. It's a basic economic principle, and it works in real estate investing. And the property manager is going to get into that with you. So, being connected to the best property manager in the city, interview multiples, get references, look out for red flags, and put communication at the top of the list. Thank you for sitting through this. I know we've gone a little bit longer, but I think it's a crucial piece of the puzzle. So we're going to get into this next one. I'm going to explain why I did this, why real estate investment is like potato chips. I think once we get into it, you'll understand. Stay tuned.